Welcome, friends. Today's talk is on the visible and invisible sun. Next Sunday's talk is on the Theosophical New Year. Also, as we do every first and third Sunday, we will have a roundtable discussion after this talk on a selected topic. This lodge passes on the path to truth and the ancient message of the wisdom of the ages as it was brought to us by H.P. Blavatsky and her staunch colleague William Q. Judge after it was restored to its original lines by Robert Crosby. This message and action has always been before us within the laws of nature, but teachings, as presented, have a way of losing their purity through human interpretations. This comprehensive and tested message of philosophy, science, and religion, the science of the soul, was left to us by Madame Blavatsky under the direction of the Masters of Wisdom. HPB said, "Nothing she presented was original except for the nosegay of ribbon used to tie the teachings together. She showed the path to perfection, but we must assimilate this message into our daily lives." Our declaration: the policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of Theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the Theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with dissensions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is the dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of Theosophy and the exemplification in practice of those principles through a truer realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among Theosophists, wherever and however situated, is similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor officers, the sole bond between its associates being that basis. And it aims to disseminate this idea among Theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as Theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization. And it welcomes to its association all those who are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to be better able to help and teach others. The true Theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. Our reading today is from the Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 4, on devotion through spiritual knowledge with Krishna, saying, "This exhaustless doctrine of yoga I formerly taught unto Vivaswat. Vivaswat communicated it to Manu, and Manu made it known unto Ishwaku. And being thus transmitted from one unto another, it was studied by the Rajarshis, until at length, in the course of time, the mighty art was lost, or harass of thy foes. It is even the same exhaustless, secret, eternal doctrine I have this day communicated unto thee, because thou art my devotee and my friend. Arjuna speaking. Seeing that thy birth is posterior to the life of Ishwaku, how am I to understand that thou wert in the beginning the teacher of this doctrine? Krishna. Both I and thou have passed through many births, O harasser of thy foes. Mine are known unto me, but thou knowest not of thine. Even though myself unborn, of changeless essence, and the Lord of all existence, yet in presiding over nature, which is mine, I am born but through my own Maya, the mystic power of self-ideation, the eternal thought and the eternal mind. I produce myself among creatures, O son of Bharata, whenever there is a decline of virtue and an insurrection of vice and injustice in the world. And thus I incarnate from age to age for the preservation of the just, the destruction of the wicked, and the establishment of righteousness. Whoever, O Arjuna, knoweth my divine birth and actions to be, even so doth not, upon quitting his mortal frame, enter into another, for he entereth into me. Many who are free from craving, fear, and anger, filled with my spirit, and who depended upon me, having been purified by the ascetic fire of knowledge, have entered into my being. And now for today's talk, Visible and Invisible Sun.
Welcome, friends. This is presented from the theosophical viewpoint because science and theosophy are diametrically opposite to one another in this respect. And here's the solar system, and we are reminded that what is given in the secret doctrine is to be applied only to our own Earth, and the other planets in the system are all referred to as divine. So what is applicable to our Earth is not applicable to the other planets. She says, do not think that the life that is on those planets is the same as what it is on Earth. She calls Earth a piece of mud. So, you can refer to the secret doctrine as to what she says about the other planets, but today's talk is basically for our sun and, of course, Earth. I have this wedge here which shows the inner constitution of the sun from the scientific viewpoint, because even though it is opposite, we need to understand what they're saying and what is being presented today to compare the two. Of course, we all know that this speculation on behalf of science has gone on for many centuries, but this student made this research this week, and their opinion has not changed. It is exactly what HBB was talking about in the 19th century physics, and they're still on that same mode of explanation for the sun. However, the mystic student of every age has felt it within himself or herself that the sun is wrapped up in mystery, and that mystery is actually connected to his own sun. Each human soul has an inner sun, and this sun and that sun is one and the same, because we all come from the spiritual center behind this sun. So we need to be reminded that it is not physical. The sun that we see in the heavens is not physical. It's invisible, but it is not physical. This philosophy concerning the physical constituent parts of the science explanation comes from Aristotelian and Baconian methods of inquiry. To those who go with that viewpoint, the sun just is what it is, and what it is appears to be. So it rises in the east, sets in the west, makes a circuit across the sky, and it looks like a ball of fire. When you look at the center there, you can see that it kind of is similar to it. However, this philosophy on its own have never been discovered by humanity without help from the Masters Lodge, because they're the custodians of this philosophy, and they gave it out so that we can build on it using the sun, physical sun. Then we can also guess at the invisible sun, and from there build on it. In this article that was presented during that time, there's a comparison between Plato and Aristotle. Plato was an initiate, so he knew the inner philosophy, inner meaning of everything that he talked about. But Aristotle came to him as a young man and came up with this way of looking at things. Close proximity to the teacher never enabled him to see the inner life, because he was not an initiate. He was never initiated. So, I have a statement here from the Masters Lodge. The adepts state these: they most emphatically deny, 1, that the sun is in combustion in any ordinary sense of the word; 2, that he is incandescent or even burning, though he is glowing, as we can see there; 3, that his luminosity has already begun to weaken and his power of combustion may be exhausted within a given and conceivable time; and 4, that his chemical and physical constitution contains any of the elements of terrestrial chemistry in any of the states that either chemist or physicist is acquainted with. So, they're not saying that the elements that are on Earth are not in the sun. They are. However, they are in a much more refined state, and remembering that we are only in our 4th round and we have to go to 7, it stands to reason that the Earth has to become far more refined in order for the elements on Earth to become similar to those in the sun. The statement is also that there are a lot of other elements that are in the sun, but they are not on Earth yet. The adepts affirm as a fact that the true sun, an invisible orb, which the known one is the shell, mask, or clothing, has in him the spirit of every element that exists in the solar system. It states that the substance producing the colored light in the latter cannot be called solid, liquid, or even gaseous. And long before our scientific philosophy came about, Aryans, in other words, all those Eastern Aryans, India, Tibet, and those areas, sang, and this is in quotation, that Surya, this is the sun, and that is the sun, was hiding behind his yogi robes. His head no one could see. And when we look at the ascetics' dresses, we see that they're dyed expressively red-yellow, and that pinkish patches on it, rudely representing the vital principle in men's blood, the symbol of the vital principle in the sun, which is called the chromosphere, the rose-colored region. How little astronomers will ever know of its real nature, even though hundreds of eclipses furnish them with the indisputable evidence of its presence. The sun is so thickly surrounded by the shell of the red matter that it is useless for them to speculate with only the help of their physical instruments upon the nature of that which they can never see or detect with mortal eye behind that brilliant, radiant zone of matter. We're talking about here. This is the photosphere. It's a little bit small, and the pink area is the chromosphere all around it. So if we ask the adepts what their opinion is, this is what they say. Beyond rotates and beats the heart and head of our system. Externally is spread its robe, the nature of which is not matter, whether solid, liquid, or gaseous, but vital electricity. If nothing else, please take this with you and think about it. Vital electricity. And it is condensed and made visible. And if this statement is objected to on the grounds that the luminosity of the sun is due to another cause than combustion and flame, it will be found that it looks that way, but there is no combustion in it. And that the explanation given is that the sun that we see in the sky reflects what is behind it. So it is controlled at an arcane level. HPV says it's a window cut into the reality behind it. Let's see. And the high temperature of the sun without combustion and no burning at all, there's no flame or burning, but we would see luminosity of a homogeneous and uniform intensity throughout it, that undulations and disturbances in the photosphere, the growing of the protuberances, and a fierce raging of elements in combustion have been observed in the sun, with their tongues of fire and spots exhibiting every appearance of cyclonic motion and solar storms. And the master says, these appearances are all there, but it is not combustion. The robes, the dazzling drapery which now envelopes the whole of the sun's globe, if it is withdrawn, or even the shining atmosphere which permits us to see the sun removed so as to allow one trifling rent, it is stated that our whole universe would be reduced to ashes. Jupiter Fulminator, revealing himself to his beloved, would incinerate her instantly. But HPV says this can never be. The protecting shell is of a thickness and at a distance from the universal heart that can hardly be ever calculated by our mathematicians. And how can they hope to see the sun's inner body once that the existence of that chromosphere is ascertained, though its actual density may still be unknown. And then she refers to Herschel. Sir Herschel was a physicist and also tremendously interested in the solar system. And he says this about the sun, quotation, "The sun also has its atmosphere, and if some of the fluids which enter into its composition should be of a shining brilliancy, while others are merely transparent, any temporary cause which may remove the lucid fluid will permit us to see the body of the sun through the transparent ones." And HPB wrote this in 1880s. Herschel had proposed this 80 years before. However, it was the wrong hypothesis, because he contradicts himself with this statement. If an observer were placed on the moon, he would see the solid body of our Earth only in those places where the transparent fluids of the atmosphere would permit him. In other words, the opaque vapors would reflect the light of the sun without permitting his view to penetrate to the surface of our globe. So, the atmosphere of our Earth, which in its relation to the atmosphere of the sun is like the tenderest skin of a fruit compared with the thickest husk of a coconut, would prevent the eye of an observer standing on the moon to penetrate everywhere to the surface of our globe. And how can an astronomer hope to penetrate to the sun's surface from our Earth and at a distance of from 85 to 95 million miles, whereas the moon, we are told, is only about 238,000 miles. So the proportionately larger size of that sun does not enable us better vision. And then Herschel talks about the sunspot. He had called these Nasmyth willow leaves, and he describes them this way: the definite shape of these objects, their exact similarity one to another, all these characters seem quite repugnant to the notion of their being of a vaporous, cloudy, or fluidic nature. His spiritual intuition, HPB says, served him better than his remarkable knowledge of physical science. He adds, "Nothing remains but to consider them as separate and independent sheets, flakes, having sort of solidity. Be they whatever they are, it is evident that they are the immediate sources of solar light and heat." And HPB says he utters a grander physical truth than any other living astronomer at that time. Well, as this student said, the astronomers are still explaining it in the physical manner and not according to this philosophy at all. He says, these organisms of some peculiar and amazing kind, and though it would be too daring to speak of such organization as partaking of the nature of life, yet we do know that vital action is competent to develop at once heat and light and electricity. So he comes here in his approximation of occult truth to solar physics. Let us turn to HPB and what she says in Isis Unveiled and Secret Doctrine. This is Isis Unveiled, page 270. None of the ancients, the sun worshippers included, regarded our visible sun otherwise than as an emblem of their metaphysical, invisible, central sun god. Moreover, they did not believe what our modern science teaches, namely that light and heat proceed from our sun and that it is this planet which imparts all life to our visible nature. His radiance is undecaying, says the Rig Veda, the intensely shining, all-pervading, unceasing, undecaying rays of Agni. This is not neither night nor day. So this obviously refers to the spiritual central sun, whose rays are all-pervading and unceasing, the eternal and boundless life-giver. He, the point, the center of the circle, the ethereal spiritual fire, the soul and the spirit of the all-pervading, mysterious ether, the despair and puzzle of the materialist, is divine electricity, or rather galvanism. In other words, it is a reflector and a magnet. This is from the Transactions of Blavatsky Lodge. This question was put to her. In what relation does the sun, the highest form of fire, we can recognize, stand to fire as you have explained to us? The sun, I'm quoting, she's talking. The sun, as on our plane, is not even solar fire. The sun we see gives nothing of itself because it is a reflection, a bundle of electromagnetic forces, one of the countless milliards of knots of Fohat. Fohat is called the thread of primeval light, the bolt of thread of Ariadne, indeed in this labyrinth of chaotic matter. This thread runs through the 7 planes, tying itself into knots. Every plane being septenary, there are thus 49 mystical and physical forces, larger knots forming the stars, suns, and systems, the smaller ones constituting the planets. Another question: in what respect is the sun an illusion? HPB answers: the electromagnetic knot of our sun is neither tangible nor dimensional, nor even as molecular as the electricity we know. The sun absorbs, psychicizes, and vampirizes its subjects within its system. Further than that, it gives out nothing of itself. And therefore, the solar fires are being consumed and gradually extinguished forms an absurdity. Sun has one distinct function. It gives the impulse of life to all that breathes and lives under its light. The sun is the throbbing heart of the system, each throb being an impulse. But this heart is invisible. No astronomer will ever see it. This is the concealed heart. The impulse is not mechanical, but a purely spiritual, nervous impulse. And we'll finish with this one. Secret Doctrine 1, page 527. Akasha is Aditi in the allegory, and the mother of Martanda. Martanda is the sun. The Diva Matri, mother of the gods. In the solar system, the sun is her buddhi and Vahan, the vehicle, hence the sixth principle. In cosmos, all the suns are Kamarupa of Akasha, and so is ours. It is only when regarded as an individual entity in his own kingdom that Surya, the sun, is the seventh principle of that great body. The sun, like the Ashwatha tree, grows with its roots above and its branches below. These roots lead to the rootless root, from whence floweth the never-ending stream of conditioned existence. The real sun is one of the numberless nucleoles in the bosom of eternity. The nucleoles are eternal and everlasting, the nuclei periodical and finite. The nucleoles form part of the absolute. They are the embrasures of that black, impenetrable fortress which is forever concealed from human or even Dhyanic sight. The nuclei are the light of eternity escaping from there. So we will finish it here and open it for your questions. There's a lot of other quotations from the Secret Doctrine, but it's just there is not enough time to put them all out in front of you today. Perhaps I have a few minutes to read this to you. She's talking about how the conflagration, or how all these planets and the sun will disappear eventually at its appointed time. The sun is not cooling and it is not dying, even though science resounds as loud as it ever did. We say that as long as there is one man left on the globe, the sun will not be extinguished. Before the hour of the solar pralaya strikes, on the watchtower of eternity, all the other worlds of our system will be gliding in their spectral shells along the silent paths of infinite space. Before it strikes, Atlas, the mighty Titan, the son of Asia, and the nursling of Ether, will have dropped his heavy mananteric burden and died. The Pleiades, the bright seven sisters, will have, upon awakening, hiding Sterope to grieve with them, to die themselves for their father's loss. And Hercules, moving off his left legs, will have to shift his place in heavens and erect his own funeral pile. Then only, surrounded by the fiery element, breaking through the thickening gloom of the Pralayan twilight, will Hercules, expiring amidst a general conflagration, bring on likewise the death of our sun. He will have unveiled, by moving of the central sun, the mysterious, the ever-hidden center of attraction of our sun and system. Fables, mere poetical fiction, yet when one knows that the most exact sciences, the greatest mathematical and astronomical truths went forth into the world among the general public, sent out by the initiated priests, the hierophants of the Sanctum Sanctorum, holy of the holies of all temples, under the guise of religious fables, it may not be amiss to search for universal truths even under the patches of fictions harlequinade. This fable about the Pleiades, the seven sisters Atlas and Hercules exists identical in subject, though under other names in the sacred Hindu books, and has likewise the same occult meaning.
Where is this from? Which reference?
Sorry?
Reference? Secret Doctrine of Isis. Article.
Theosophy's editorial note 10, the nature of the sun.
So the invisible sun, our sun is a reflector of a great, it is an equivalent to space and all of that surrounds the universe, or the great sun.
Yes.
Could you repeat the question?
The question is, does this sun and the system represent the great sun of the universe?
More.
That's your question?
I mean, it seems that space surrounding our sun would represent the great sun.
No, that
Or
is
at
not.
least something that exists within it.
Okay, she told us at the beginning of these writings not to compare the solar system to anything else, remembering that our solar system is in the Milky Way, the galaxy. Milky Way. It is a dot on the arm, one of the arms of the galaxy. Looked it, but it was such a small one of these, didn't bring it. But you can go and look at it online. It shows you exactly where the solar system is, and it's just like this, a dot on the whole Milky Way. Now, Milky Way is our galaxy, but there are billions of them. Science has come to that conclusion too, and HPB says you can look through the telescope all you want, but you will never come to a reality of it, because after a certain distance, everything becomes stationary when you look at through the telescope. And our scientists will tell you the same thing, because they do look at it, but it goes so far and then it cuts it. Everything else becomes stationary, no movement. So you cannot judge it as to where we are and that kind of measurement that is necessary to determine where the galaxy is. So it's very interesting when you look at these truths that they're talking about. And the masters also say you can go so much, but no further. In other words, the inner occult philosophy is necessary to fathom the reality of what they're telling us, internal to each human soul. Let me finish his question and I will come to you. So, remembering this, you have to go to the solar system, which is this. This is this dot on one of the arms of the Milky Way. This system, it's just like a little dot. We don't know anything about it. We don't even know a lot of everything that we need to know about our Earth. But if you correlate the information given, all of these planets also grow, develop from inside out, just like the Earth is. She tells us that the dianthogenic host is related to these planets in the Secret Doctrine. How they're related, then we have to figure it out. But these are sacred planets, she tells us in the Secret Doctrine. And one piece of information Mr. Judge gave us was that Venus, that's Earth, this one I believe is Venus here. Venus is in her 7th round.
Could you show it again, please?
is Venus. The third one. This is that is Jupiter. This is Saturn. These, she says, do not belong to our system. Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto do not belong to the solar system, she said. In The Secret Doctrine. This is not my statement. You can read it for yourselves. Okay, so having said that, the student in the back, you have to remember that the central spiritual sun that is behind our physical sun burns everything, right? Because it's a spiritual center, it's electricity, and it causes conflagration and burns everything. So, and when we start from here, there is 7 centers until we get to the center of our Milky Way. They named one of them, Pleiades. Our Earth is attracted to Pleiades. And she just explained how this conflagration is going to come about. And she says, fable with a question mark. In other words, you have to determine for yourself how this is related to what we are saying here today. So remembering that 7 centers reaching all the way to the central spiritual sun that controls everything, where would you go in your mind? Would you not go to logoic light at the beginning of the mantra when that initial light comes into our space, which is the universe, all of the space? We are here talking just the solar system. So 7 levels to the Milky Way, but where is the other 7 that the Milky Way is attracted to until you get to the center of the universe that she describes in the Secret Doctrine as the point in the circle in Brahma's egg. So they're related, obviously, but how many levels you're going to go through? Perhaps 7 to get to the truth about it.
Yeah.
So that's what you need to remember, that this only applies here, not to, and correspondentially to the universe, but you have to move it along to get there. Yes, your question.
Just, I think you implicitly covered it. The Milky Way is one of an infinite number of galaxies we just don't know.
Billions
How many?
of them.
Billions of galaxies.
Yes, and she says
Wow.
they are all alive. They all have life, but its own kind. We must never think that this globe's lifestyle is on the other ones, not even on the planets of the solar system, because they are not in the same round that we are in. We're only in the 4th round. In the 5th, she says, our mind is going to be free. In other words, it's not going to have to go through substance anymore. It's going to function on the plane of Chitta, which is the field of the mind. The mind functions on its own, but in Earth life, it has to function through a physical body for us. We don't know how to function any other way, but the perfected ones know, because they use all of those principles in their original form. We have to synthesize it into unity first in order to know what they're talking about. 7 levels to everything. So, HPV says that Venus is going to have a tremendous input into the development of humanity on Earth in the coming ages, because she is considered the alter ego of Earth, whatever that means. This student does not know how to explain that, but it's in the Secret Doctrine. Yes?
So, just going from the highest level possible, everything that is physical that we see will eventually disappear or transform. Whatever is spiritual always is and is everywhere.
Okay, what you're asking is, all these planetary bodies are visible because they represent the same as Earth. In other words, they're on the 4th plane.
Gotcha. So there are other
now,
planes involved too.
Well, this is the 4th plane. When we're on this plane, this is what we observe with our physical eyes, okay? what is going to happen to us, say, in the 5th round? Who can say? Because we are etherealized. And why does Earth has a moon? The moon is the planetary chain that we were on before evolving on the Earth. So it's older than our Earth. But how come some of these other planetary bodies have more moons, for instance? If we were on the moon chain, what does those represent for them? This student does not understand the philosophy in its entirety, obviously, because I couldn't figure it out. I've been thinking about it, but don't know what the solution is. If we are on one system and then we come onto the other, and that is visible because it's still dying, but it hasn't died. But there are also other planets that don't have any moons. For instance, Venus is in its 7th round. In other words, they have evolved to that spiritual perfectibility that Venus offers them. We're not talking the same here on Earth. Even though we're going to have a 7th round, and HPV says in the Secret Doctrine, then the masters of wisdom will walk on Earth with humanity, because humanity will have increased their knowledge, their compassion. In other words, we will be more like them so that they can mingle amongst us.
But we won't be as physical then as we are now.
This student does not know, haven't been there. What I am simply relating what is in the Secret Doctrine, and HPV says, as the time goes on, even in this round, we're going to etherealize, because we were androgynous at the beginning. In the middle of the 3rd round, we divided male, female, then men, woman. She said in the 3rd round, we went through a tremendous amount of change, from budding, sweat-born, egg-born, to placental. It's all in the Secret Doctrine. You can read it for yourselves. And then we have the 4th, which was Atlantis, and this student was looking at a map of Atlantis in Donnelly's book, and HPV, I think, commented on it that all of his research was based on reliable sources, but that his reputation was ruined anyway by writing that book. But she's hinting that what he says has truth at the base of it. And Atlantis was our home, and we did not finish the cycle. We sank because we were doing wicked things to other peoples and land masses around us. Now we're in the 5th. This is the 5th round. Sorry, 4th round, 5th root, and we're the 5th stop of the 5th root. And on this continent, the 6th subrace is coming. And she says the forerunners of that race are here amongst us. This student that doesn't know what that means either. Whether she's referring to the philosophical, theosophical students, or she had something else in mind when she said that, this student does not know. Well, you have to all come to your own conclusions about it. But she gives us a lot of stuff to think about, like this conflagration. She says, okay, you think it's fable with a question mark? This puts a lot of stuff in my head. When I go into my meditation room, I bring this into my head. I'm thinking about it because I want to know what the truth is. I want to know what's underneath it. What is the link as to why she said that to us if it wasn't true? I have a feeling that it is the truth. She would not have put it there any other way. But she puts all these things in our head so we can think about it.
Can you think in terms of volume 1, page 200, at circle?
Diagram?
Yeah.
What
that's
about
just
it?
One of many ways of, this is what, it's got the earth on one side,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a
Yes.
Hebrew thing on the other
Yes,
side.
you do. I have it printed, but I don't have it with me. So I will bring this to your attention. Yeah, this is a very good diagram on page 200 because she shows us, here is the diagram. This is the diagram here. She shows us that we have come down on this side of the diagram. This is Earth. This is the most solid we're going to get. And I will give this to pass it around. Most solid. On the going up cycle, she equates them with the root races. When we were coming, we were this, and when we are going, we're going to be coeval with what we were coming down. In other words, when we were androgynous, it implies that we're going to become androgynous again. That there, in the upper realms, there is only negative, positive impulse. Chemical combinations, for instance, go by attraction. On the higher planes, there is no male-female orientation at all. It's simply that impulse of the positive with the negative. And in men, when you think about it, one side of that division represents the spiritual, the other side in woman, which is substance, represents wisdom. So one is a complement of the other one. That is why men and women are complementary. Both are needed for raising, she tells us, children for future ages. For instance, when you look here, on the third plane, it says substantial formative world, and then when we go one up, intellectual, creative, and then further up, it becomes archetypal. And here, look at it for yourself. It shows us what we're going to become by equation. We were this coming down, now we're going to go home with all the knowledge we have gained, plus uplifting of all of the elemental lives around us, because Mr. Judge told us that all of these elemental lives in the next manvantara are going to be human. So they don't leave anything out, everything is going to be developed. Humanity has tremendous responsibility, not just for itself and the world we live in, but all of the other kingdoms around us, because they look up to us, because we are the most intelligent form on earth.
I'm kind of hearing science is helpful to us because it eventually proves what's in there.
Mm-hmm.
But it still is.
It's conjecture. Where the
kind of
sun is
liquid.
considered,
It changes its opinion from one time to the next because it's not taking into account
all the other
the
planes.
picture.
Yes, when she was on Earth with us, in the early 20th century, the scientists were saying the color of the sun was blue. This student just looked up the color of the sun as to what it is. Now NASA says it's white. Figure it out. They change it continuously.
I read that some scientists in the 1880s said that it was
blue.
blue.
Yeah. So now it's white. According to NASA, it's white. And they're coming up to this conclusion because they're taking pictures. Our satellites are taking pictures, and by looking at the pictures, they think that is the real color of the planets and the sun. And they look at the surface of these planets and say that there were crates, there was water, but we have to remember whatever the plane surface shows, the humanity that lived on it is in its 7th round. They don't have physical bodies anymore, as far as this student can understand it. So we're not going to find them in the sense that they're not physical. How would physical entities, for instance, live on Venus? Its environment is sulfuric acid. So we have to be intelligent in trying to understand what is being said and apply it correctly in order to come up with the correct understanding, because she says misconception leads to error, and error then becomes the mode of dealing with our environment. We have to come up with the correct thinking in order to deal with it correctly. Yes?
Does this imply that there is some sort of life on all planets, or some planets are completely devoid of any forms of life?
Where solar system is, she says, all of them has life,
Oh.
all of them. But their life and their humanity, their animals, their plants, is not the same as on here, because we have now solidified and they're not solidified. You couldn't live in, for instance, Jupiter is ice. Yeah, how would we survive? It has no solidity, it's just ice. What about Saturn, for instance? And what about Venus, who's the closest to the sun? Because Mercury is referred to in some of the writings as the sun because it is so very close in proximity to the sun. How would we live on Mercury? We will be incinerated. Yes?
When we talk about the 7 planes of existence, the fourth one, or the third one, I'm sorry, I think it's called the Jiva, life principle. So when we say life, does it contain life? What are we exactly talking about there?
Okay, well, she explains it, She says that life is everywhere around you. In other words, that electrical force, because it's electromagnetic, your astral body is electromagnetic, so it's Jiva. Jiva, she says, it's everywhere. Consider your body as a sponge, and you are in it. So the sponge is sucking it up. The mode of your living enables you to suck up the electrical vitality into the astral body. The astral body is electromagnetic and it has all of the colors in it. So the sun supplies the vital electricity and your astral body absorbs it and then sustains the physical body. What you eat sustains your physical body, but the astral body has its own function, because without the astral body, your physical body could not live. And in the writings, Jiva is the one that's everywhere, and when it comes into you, I think they call it prana, breath. Without it, we could not live. And when we die, in other words, when we drop the physical body, the prana then becomes Jiva again. We release it. Yes?
When you speak of the visible and invisible sun, are you also speaking of us as people?
Correct. Every human
As above, so
soul.
below?
Yeah. Your question is, are we just talking about the solar system or the human soul as well? Remembering that the human soul comes from that center of a spiritual energy, even though the ray belongs to one of the Dayan Chohans, nevertheless, in their collectivity, the secret doctrine says, they constitute the logoic light. And in other words, even when you put our light through a prism, the white light becomes all of the colors that we see on earth. So each human soul comes from that center. It is a spiritual entity. On earth life, it has to have a body. It has to have a form or it cannot live. Remembering that the understanding of this central spiritual sun is dependent on your understanding your own inner sun. The two then will clarify. In other words, all of the illusion drops and the reality shows itself to you, is what she's getting at. Thank you for coming. We'll hope to see you next week.